All right, guys, welcome back to another podcast on MMAUnhinged. Today, I'm once again joined by my I struggled on it. My co-host. There we go. Co-host Oscar. How's it going?
It's going great.
Yeah,
unfortunately, we couldn't get together for a preview episode last week, but we're gonna make it up for you guys this week because we have so many fun fights to talk about, and we have very passionate opinions about those fights.
100%, and I wish I didn't mess up with the intro, but yeah, my co-host Oscar Silva over there in America joining me today with a very important episode. I'd say the first fight of 2022, Kattar versus Chikadze, and then we're going to talk about the first pay-per-view of 2022. UFC 270 in Ghana, US is gone. It's definitely not going to disappoint. And if you're catching this is probably before the press conference. So you'll probably see this before the press conference, and then we've got a big press conference to look out for. I'm sure we're going to have some entertaining quotes in that press conference.
Without a doubt. There may not be bad blood directly between Ngannou and Gane, but there's certainly a little bit of beef with his former coach, Ferdinand Lopez. Ferdinand Lopez has been taking little jabs. He's even gone as far as to say Francis has an ego problem. And I feel like both men are very confident heading into this fight week. And here's the great thing about fighting. Whatever we see out there, it's the truth. And we're going to find out the truth this Saturday night.
Exactly. You know, the videos of the sparring, that doesn't matter because they're getting locked in a cage, and that's where we can really find out, you know, who the better man is. But yeah, we're going to talk about UFC Fight Night, Kattar versus Chikadze, where we found out that Calvin Kattar is the better man.
Yeah, my goodness. I told you guys on the Best of 2021 episode that I was not counting out Calvin Kattar after the beating he had taken for Max Holloway. And he went out there and he proved me right. But if you know me, you know I never fall in love with a pick. I will change my pick the night of. I'll change my pick the hour before because, you know, some of these fights are very close. And I actually did change my pick to Giga Chikadze 2 days before. And I was kicking myself watching this because my breakdown of this fight was correct, but I picked the wrong guy in the end. I knew that Calvin Kattar would perform better in rounds 4 and 5, and he did, but that wasn't the story. Calvin Kattar wrestled far more than I expected him to. Calvin Kattar didn't. It appeared he had no wrestling to fall back on when he was getting obliterated on the feet against Max Holloway, but this time around, Giga slips, he catches the kick, and Giga is not able to get up after he gets taken down, and he's not moving around the way he was early in the fight in the second, and that was a huge difference maker, and Calvin Kattar put the pressure on him and never let up. And Giga Chikadze's toughness is definitely something to talk about here. I didn't know he was this battle tested. Now we know. And it's going to be a big lesson for Giga because Giga was ready for a title shot. And Calvin Kattar told him, not yet, pal, not yet.
Well, I had to agree with you. My pick heading into this fight, if we had spoke about it, I would have chose Giga Chikadze. I thought Giga was going to go in there, put on that striking masterclass, but you know, Calvin Kattar said no, and I feel like Calvin Kattar investing in that wrestling in the first round, really won in that fight, is that because it got Chikadze to slow down in the fourth and the fifth round is where he really took over. We saw in the second and the third, Chikadze had a little bit in there, but it still had a little bit of snap on his punches, but it wasn't what he had in that first round. Chikadze came out sharp, he came out quick, throwing everything with 100% power, and he just didn't connect. And Calvin Kattar done the smart decision to catch a kick, take him down, and I think the wrestling of Chikadze trying to get up and Kattar just being able to hold him down just eventually exhausted him. And Chikadze knows now knows what it does. He has to take to win a fight in the top 5. So it'd be interesting to see where Chikadze goes from here. But I feel like this is a fantastic lesson, as you were saying, and he will come back stronger than ever.
Yeah, Giga Chikadze's gas tank has kind of always been a problem. He's admitted that the weight cuts definitely take a toll on him the later the fight goes. And we saw it on display here, but his heart is undeniable. Same thing with Calvin Kattar, proving his heart in a war last year. And what a bounce back for Calvin Kattar. Some people really thought he was going to go on somewhat of a Roy McDonald path where after he takes a brutal beating, he really can't just get the same momentum going. I think Calvin Kattar is going to stay in the top 5 for the foreseeable future after a performance like this. And Giga Chikadze, The problem with him in this fight was he was worrying about that takedown. Against Cesar Barbosa, what takedown is there to worry about? That's why the guy never looked better. He was able to fight in his arena, in his style with the kickboxing. And I remember this fight against Jamal Emmers, and Giga Chikadze did not look like a world beater, to be honest. I didn't know, I didn't think he would end up being this high ranked after seeing that fight, and it was because Jamal Emmers is a good wrestler. And I kind of erased that from my mind heading into this fight because of all the hype, the 7-fight win streak. But no, Calvin Kattar reminded us that that's definitely a weakness in Chikadze's game, and that Kattar's just a dog. Both men are dogs, and this is a fight of the year contender without a doubt.
Well, that's it. That's the key word you said there. He's a dog. He doesn't give up. He's got heart. He showed that in the Max Holloway fight, and he showed it in this one. He got stung with some heavy punches in that first round, but he kept on coming and eventually worked out his game plan, and that was taken down and did what he needed to do. But it's interesting to see what the UFC does next with these two fighters. I think Kattar has 3 options. I think he's got Yair, he's got Brian Ortega, and he's got Josh Emmett. I think them 3 there, I think they make sense. And for Chikadze, I'd like to see, the Arnold Allen fight, but I'm not too sure if Arnold Allen is booked or not. I think he is. No, Arnold Allen's scheduled to fight. Yeah, Dan Hooker. Yeah, been rumored in the works, sort of thing. Not official, but we don't know whether it's happening or not. But if Arnold Allen can come out against Dan Hooker, I think Arnold Allen versus Chikadze.
Yeah, there's so many great options in this featherweight division, which honestly has never been cooler. Like, this is a great time for the featherweight division. We have so many exciting prospects. And I feel like it was kind of showcased when Max Holloway pulled out of the Volkanovski trilogy. And we saw so many people raising their hands up. We were all thinking these are legitimate title contenders. But I think Calvin Kattar can definitely earn his way to a title shot after this, especially with Holloway. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. So who knows? Maybe even this gets him a title shot, because people are talking about Giga getting a title shot.
Yeah, 100%. But I feel like the UFC will try and get him on a little bit of a win streak if he does get the title shot. So maybe if I'm the UFC, I book him with Yair or Ortega.
Yeah, I think Ortega's the better option because he fought before Yair, and both guys took so much damage. But I like the style matchup with Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega historically has struggled against boxers. And but we saw in his last fight, it doesn't matter who you are, he can take you to the ground and choke you out. So it's going to be really fun. What's next for Calvin? And we'll move on to this co-main event here. Let's be honest, this wasn't exactly the co-main event. It was more like the fight that happened before the main event. But regardless, this was a career best performance from Jake Collier, who I have been very critical of Jake Collier ever since the heavyweight move. I've questioned his discipline. And I didn't think he was going to stick around that long, but he has, and he's beating a long-time established heavyweight in Chase Sherman. Chase Sherman, ever since he got off the roids after the Villanueva fight, he's not looked the same. He just doesn't really have any heart, and Jake Collier proved it here. Jake was quicker, and he was 20 pounds heavier. So as soon as Jake caught the kick, he got him to mount, and Chase Sherman just pretty much gave up in that position, just gave up his back. And Jake Collier, who is a legitimate white belt, gets the tap very early into the fight and got himself a performance of the night bonus. It was a really cool finish, and I actually thought this was going to be a long, sloppy fight, and I'm glad it wasn't.
Well, yeah, that's it. You mentioned there he got the fight to the ground and then eventually got into mount, and that was the difference maker. Is just Collier was levels above Chase Sherman on the ground, and as you mentioned, a white belt. It's not a great look for Chase Sherman. The skid he's on now, losing to Part Porker, now losing to Jake Collier. He's in a tough spot at the moment, and as you mentioned, bouncing back at BKFC, then coming back to the UFC. He thought, he could jump straight into it, but it doesn't work like that. This is MMA, and it's you can get choked out by anyone in the sport. And Jake Collier, put himself back on the map. And we were talking about this before we went on air. He's like a blown up middleweight, light heavyweight, but he's still handling himself at heavyweight.
Yeah, it's a kind of a testament to how some low level heavyweights in the UFC are performing these days. As Dana White always says, we need heavyweights, and I feel like they need higher level heavyweights because I don't think either guy is traditionally UFC caliber. But yeah, Jay Collier was simply the better man on the night.
100%. And Brandon Royval got a close split decision over Bontarin in this one. And I'm sure Oscar's going to have a few wise words about the judges in this one.
Yeah, I had no idea who the judges were going to pick in this one, especially since it was a split decision. I felt like Brandon Royval did not fight the fight that he had wanted to. In fact, he addressed it in the post-fight interview that he wasn't as active as he would have hoped he was. But at the end of the day, I personally did score it for Brandon Royval. Sure, Brandon was on his back for periods of time, but he was very active, and he was actually the guy doing the damage in the spot, landing elbows. I felt like Bontarin was not trying to get the Habib style ground pound going. The guy was just trying to hold him. And I honestly don't reward that as much. So I did give it to Brandon. And you could argue that Brandon won the fight in that third round with the armbar. I don't know if Bontarin tapped, but I know for a fact it was in his mind to tap at the moment. He was in deep trouble. But yeah, regardless, Brandon Royval really impressed me here going to a decision, because he hasn't gone to a decision in a very long time in his career. So that's definitely a leap for Brandon Royval.
Yeah, it's a good experience for Brandon Royval. And as you mentioned there, in that third round, was it a tap? Was it not a tap? But we do know that he was thinking about tapping. Definitely, it looked like he was gonna go tap, but he slipped out at the most important time. But we don't know what happened there. But Brandon Royval, as you mentioned, I rewarded in the fight because he was more active. Bontarin got the fight to the ground, but he was just sat there, not looking to advance to a better position. So Royval was staying more active. He was scrambling. And that's why I awarded him the fight, and I thought he was the deserved winner. But it was a close one. On a different night, different judges, it could have went the other way.
Yeah, well, without a doubt, I don't think Bontarin has anything to be ashamed about, especially since he didn't miss weight this time. Because last time he went up a weight class and he missed weight. That was a bad look. This time around, at least he got my respect from that vantage point. And we'll move on to the rematch between Katlyn Chookagian and Jennifer Maia. This was such a confident pick on my end because these women already fought like less than 2 years ago, and Katlyn Chookagian handily won the fight. And I really didn't expect any change in Maia's game plan here. And I was right. Katlyn Chookagian fought her fight, but it was far more aggressive than usual. I'll give her that. A lot of people weren't expecting this fight to be very exciting, but we saw a lot of damage dished out by Katlyn Chookagian this time. So that was pretty cool to see from her. It's the last fight on her contract. I don't know if the UFC will keep her because she does kill off a lot of contenders, but wherever she ends up, she's going to succeed, and she's going to be in the top 3 of any division.
Yeah, I think the UFC would keep her on, as you mentioned there. I feel like the UFC needs, fighters like her to, really test, these prospects. But as you mentioned, she's beaten them. So, if you look at that, if you're the UFC and do we want to keep her because she keeps beating them? But yeah, as you mentioned there, Chookagian looked good against Maia. And as you mentioned, it was, less than 2 years ago when these first fought, and, it was style. This was going to happen, and we knew it was going to happen. And Chookagian put on a fantastic performance. And I'm impressed to see her, move on in the ladder and see, and as you mentioned, the last fight on the deal. So it'll be interesting to see where she goes. I hope the UFC re-signs her, but if not, what we got Bellator. She can over there and have a good run as well. So
yeah, somebody who's on a good run right now is Vyacheslav Borshev Slava. This guy can fight and he can dance. He went out there against a very game Dakota Bush. I picked up Vyacheslav with a decent amount of confidence. But the way the fight was swinging, Bush was actually winning the fight. Bush got the takedowns. But Borshev, working at Team Alpha Male over there in California, he's been working on his get-up game, and he showed it here. He got to his feet, and all he needed was the perfect body shot, just a single body shot. And Bush folded over, and the fight was over. Borshev has legit power, and he attacks a variety of areas, and this guy will be very effective against the right matchups.
I mean, his striking is absolutely picture perfect. It's incredible. And we've seen that in his last fight against Chris Duncan on the Contender Series. And, seeing Chris Duncan, a good friend of the channel, he's been on the channel. We go back and forth in DMs, and seeing, Borishev doing that to Duncan, who is a fantastic fighter. It just shows how good he is. And yet again, he put himself on the map against Bush. But yeah, he's patient. And when he picks his shots, they land, and the opponents feel him. And Bush just didn't want no more of that. It was a fantastic body shot.
Yeah, Borshev was one of my favorite prospects coming out of the Contender Series, and for a prospect, he's fairly older. He's in his early 30s, so he's got to get moving. I think he's going to get a lot of momentum after this win. And somebody else that got some momentum after a win was Bill Algio. He fought a Contender Series prospect in Joe Anderson Brito. Brito was a sizable favorite. I picked him, but man, I should have seen the writing on the wall here. This was not too different from the Spike Carlisle matchup for Algio. All he had to do was weather the storm from the heavy hitter, and he was able to secure the win here. And that's what he did with significantly higher volume. He landed twice as many strikes as Brito. But every strike that Brito landed did count. But at the end of the day, Algio was just the busier fighter and won very decisively.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. As you mentioned, they're quite similar to the Spike Carlisle fight, where the first round is going to be a tough round because they come out and they've got that lactic acid building up. But once they throw all their their strikes and they eventually gas out, that's where Algio really shines. Is being durable, being able to take the shots, being able to come in that second and third round. And Algio, did what he had to do, and it was a good performance. And nice to see him moving up in the ladder in the lightweight division.
Yeah. And we'll move on to the middleweight division, where Jamie Pickett, as an underdog that I picked, got a unanimous decision victory over the Contender Series alum and Dana White looking for a fight. Alum Joseph Holmes. Joseph Holmes, he fought in the Contender Series. He got a submission, and Dana White still had not made his mind up about the guy. So he books him on looking for a fight. And even after he knocks his opponent out in quick fashion, the same opponent that Jamie Pickett knocked out in the Contender Series, he's still not sold on him. He actually has to ask James Krause if he's ready. And James Krause says he's ready, but let's be honest, I don't think he was ready. Jamie Pickett just outclassed him. He tired him out with the clinch, and he got a decisive unanimous decision using his experience advantage.
Well, that was it. And when I was watching the Dana White looking for a fight, and seeing Dana White question if he was ready, it's always in the back of my mind. Does Dana White believe that he was ready? And I feel like Dana White went off James Krause's word, and James Krause said he was ready. But I feel like this is a massive experience for Holmes. I think he's going to learn. It was his UFC debut. Maybe there was some jitters involved with that, and it was I feel like there's still a lot of positives he could take from this fight. It was a good fight. He was in the fight the whole time, but he just didn't do enough.
Yeah, and this is another quality win for Pickett after beating the former welterweight. I can't remember his name at that moment, but we'll move on to the welterweight division here. Court Mcgee getting it done against Ramiz Brahimaj, another underdog winning that I picked. Court Mcgee is I would say he's not consistent, but when he uses veteran savvy, he tends to win these fights against these prospects. Ramiz Brahimaj is a BJJ guy, and when you can't take down, when he couldn't take down his opponent here, he was just in a terrible spot. And Court Mcgee dominated this fight. This might have been the best performance of Court Mcgee's career. The guy knocked down Ramiz, and after that, he just kept him against the fence, and Brahimaj had little to no offense.
But that's it, as you mentioned there. That's what we're heading into a Court Mcgee fight. There's some things that you can guarantee, and that's him pushing his opponent up against the fence. We see it in most of his fights, and it always works. And as you mentioned, he got the knockdown. Put some grappling in there, and just did. Court Mcgee did. Rolled back the years a little bit.
Yeah, Court Mcgee is on a really good run in his career. I didn't expect this out of him. But if he uses his wrestling, he can go very far. But it's those fights where he doesn't wrestle where he tends to pay, such as the Ben Saunders fight and the Carlos Condit fight. We'll move on to Brian Kelleher's unanimous decision win over Kevin Croom. I was so confident in this spot too, because Kevin Croom, he's a very exciting fighter to watch, a very fun personality. But at the end of the day, he doesn't have the greatest gas tank, and he's not excellent in any area, really. And Brian Kelleher, he definitely had the power edge here, even though he was fighting a guy up a weight class.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, Kevin Croom, He's been on the show. He's a fantastic personality, but he needs the right matchups. And I feel like the Brian Kelleher matchup was not the good match. I know he stepped in at short notice, so maybe he's looking back at that and it wasn't a good idea. Maybe a full camp against, not against Brian Kelleher sort of caliber fighter. A right matchup the UFC needs to take him into. But when he stepped in at short notice and he got that win against, it was a standing guillotine, I believe.
It was Roosevelt Roberts.
There we go. And now Roswell Roberts, he recently got a release from the UFC and fought the other day, and I believe he won. But yeah, against Brian Kelleher, I knew this was going to happen. Kevin Croom, he's an exciting fighter. He's got a fantastic personality. But stepping in short notice against Brian Kelleher probably wasn't the best idea.
Yeah, and Brian Kelleher was simply ahead. I thought he would eventually get the submission against Kevin Croom here, but we'll give Kevin Croom that. He did survive those guillotine attempts from Kelleher, which is always dangerous. And we'll move on to TJ Brown's unanimous decision victory over Charles Rosa. Man, James Krause was a very busy man this night. There was a lot of ups and downs for him, mostly downs. This was an up for him, though, as this guy TJ Brown got a fairly decisive unanimous decision win over Charles Rosa. He was a big favorite coming into this, and it's very easy to know why. TJ Brown was simply the better wrestler here. In Charles Rosa, even though he's been around the block, one thing you cannot really say about the guy is that he has a good get-up game. He simply doesn't have a good get-up game. Sometimes he thinks he can get submissions that aren't there. That's what really happened here. TJ Brown was simply ahead, both on the feet and on the ground.
Yeah, Charles Rosa before this fight signed a new deal with the UFC. I believe it's a 4-fight deal. But there's, I feel like this is if you looked at Charles Rosa's record, he had a win, loss, win, loss, win. But this is the first time he's gone back-to-back losses, I believe. So TJ Brown broke the streak, sort of thing. But as you mentioned, his takedowns, his grappling, TJ Brown was the story of the fight, and he's also been on this show as well. He's also been on the MMA channel, so it's great to see guys doing their thing. And the TJ Brown, man, his wrestling was the key for the victory. And as you mentioned, Charles Rosa just couldn't get up.
Might have to get TJ Brown back on here after this. TJ Brown is he's finding great game plans these days. He was a little more reckless back in the day, but with the tutelage of James Krause, I mean, he fights the right way, and I think found a lot more success in the featherweight division.
Yeah, James Krause is a fantastic fighter, but he's an even better coach, I gotta believe.
Yeah, he just stated that his next fight will be his last.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. So it'll be sad to see him go, but I feel like he's at the point of his career where he wants to probably concentrate more on his coaching.
Yeah, and if he retires, it would be on a hell of a run. Only one loss in like his last 7, and it was a controversial loss to Giles.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we've got a fantastic pay-per-view to talk about, and that's UFC 270. Oh my goodness, we're in for a treat. We've got the heavyweights at the top of the card for the heavyweight title of the world. Ngannou versus Gane, former training partners. But we were talking before the show. Ngannou revealed they only trained 6 rounds or something like that, so they weren't always training together. So it's interesting to see what actually happens in this fight. We were talking before, and we said, all the videos, all that sparring videos, it goes out the window because they've got 25 minutes to win the fight, and we're going to find out who the better man is on Saturday night.
Yeah, I would agree. I really think that this is a pick-em fight. I can't honestly, even though I'm picking Cyril Gane to win by unanimous decision as of this moment, Francis Ngannou just needs one. He really needs one. If you've seen any of Francis's fight, the guy is a human wrecking ball. His combination of speed and ferocious power is a danger to any man on this planet. That's why he's the heavyweight champion as we speak. And Cyril Gane is the interim champion, and Gane is 10-0, never lost. And he's fought power punchers in 2 of his last 3 matchups, and he's walked out fairly unscathed. Derek Lewis landed like 13 strikes on him. He outclassed Derek Lewis, which Derek Lewis does have a win over Francis, just let me remind you. And then before that, he fought Volkov. Volkov is like one of the most technical strikers we've seen. He was destroying Derek Lewis before he got knocked out. Just a very solidified guy in the division. I actually picked Volkov to win. I thought he had more experience in the MMA game. He would win. Gane outpoints him and wins the fight, and that's when I really got sold on Gane. and that's how he earned the title shot. Before that, he fights Jairzinho, which Francis beat as well. And man, Jairzinho fought a terrible fight, but at the end of the day, Don has fought power punchers and he survived. And I think he can do that against Francis here. Will he get clipped at least once in this fight? I guarantee it. I think Francis is just too dangerous, but nothing really points to me telling me that Cyril Gans has durability issues. Which, by the way, you can be the most durable guy on earth. Francis probably can still put you out, as he proved in the Stipe fight. But at the end of the day, I think Gans' footwork and he's just going to be elusive enough to survive, man. I think after Francis goes through 2 rounds of just intimidating Gan, I think Gan's going to open up more as the fight goes. He's going to score those points. And could he find a finish? Maybe, but I will pick Gan win this by decision. But with no real confidence, I would hate to bet this fight.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also going to go with the Garn unanimous decision. You were saying that, Garn, it takes one shot for him. Man. He's got 25 minutes to land a shot that takes 2 seconds to go for his, from his hand to the opponent's face. It takes 2 seconds. So he's got 25 minutes to land that one killer shot. And the longer the fight goes on, the opportunity goes less. I say the opportunity goes less because, he's probably more tired. But the thing is with Garn, if he gets Ngannou hurt, I feel like he should not rush in. He don't get overzealous. We've seen him being patient in the past, and I feel like it's the exact same game plan. If he gets Ngannou hurt, he clips him with a good punch. Don't jump in for the finish. He's got 25 minutes to win this fight, and the best way to beat Ngannou is take him the distance and tire him out. And I feel like the technique of Garn is just too great for Ngannou. We've seen it. If Rosa's strike was built like Garn, I feel like Rosa's strike had a good chance in that fight, but he just took a really big shot. Ngannou, though, we know how good he is. He's got that big bomb of a right hand, and as I mentioned, it just takes one shot. You can never bet against Ngannou, because it just takes one shot. He would probably be a gambler's heartbreak dream, honestly. But yeah. Garn, I'm gonna go with Garn UD. I see him outpointing Ngannou, using his technique. If he does clip Ngannou, staying at distance. He stays at distance. He doesn't jump in. That's what I would do if I was Garn.
Yeah, a very interesting thing here is that Garn does have Francis's former coach, Ferdinand Lopez, on his side. Ferdinand knows Francis very well. He knows all his tendencies, and I'm sure that he's come together to make the perfect game plan for that fight. And I think it's just going to be enough. But betting this fight, as you said, it would make me sweat bullets if I bet on Cyril Gane here. But also, if I bet on Ngannou, I could also be a little angry at myself because Cyril Gane is super elusive and he uses movement very well. And one of these days, Gane will get caught, but I don't really think it'll be this time around. And let's touch on the outside stakes here for Francis Ngannou. This has been a huge conversation piece. Francis Ngannou is clearly not happy with his contract situation. He did not renew his contract before this, and Francis has his relationship with the UFC is in a really tough spot here. He wants to fight Tyson Fury. I don't think they'll let him. He'll lose so much negotiating power if he loses this fight. There's so much on the line here for Francis. How do you think it impacts this fight?
Yeah, I feel like MMA and Ngannou is the perfect fit for each other. I feel like if Ngannou does switch over to Tyson Fury, the boxing world, I just don't see it going well for Ngannou. If he does come up against the likes of Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, Dillian White, Anthony Joshua, I'm sorry to say, but they've been dedicating all their life to be a boxer, an actual boxer. Ngannou's dedicated his life to defend takedowns because he's a big power puncher. So I just don't see it going well for Ngannou switching over to boxing. But crazier things have happened, and Ngannou wants what he wants. And if he does win this fight, I guarantee you he goes over to boxing and he loses. Whoever he takes on, Dillian White or anyone like that, I guarantee he loses.
What do you think Francis's future looks like? What's your pick for this fight?
I got Garn unanimous decision, and then that means he's if Ngannou wins this fight, he gets another fight. I think Dana White said because the Champions Clause or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but I think Garn wins this fight, and then that means Ngannou's out of contract with the UFC. But then he's on a loss, so Tyson Fury won't look at him because he's on the loss, and as you mentioned, the negotiation he won't be able to have a lot of power if he wants to fight Tyson Fury.
In my personal opinion, I think Francis will lose this fight, and I think he'll go to where it appears that Kelleher is going to go. He's going to go to the PFL. The PFL gives you a guaranteed $1 million, and Francis Ngannou has just been complaining that he's only been paid $500,000 in his last fight. So if you want to guarantee double of that, and that's only for one fight. That doesn't even include the fights before the final. I think that's the spot for Francis. I really believe that Francis would steamroll that entire scene there in PFL. And I really cannot wait for this fight because the stakes are so high. The stress heading into a heavyweight title fight is like nothing else. Nothing else.
Yeah, but if Ngannou wins or loses, and if I'm the UFC, I pull my finger out of my ass, and I give Ngannou what he wants because these are the two fighters in the heavyweight division that can have a trilogy like we've seen with Stipe and DC. They're young, but Ngannou's youngish. He's older than Garn, but Garn is still he's still young. We're not. I feel like this is probably the best trilogy we'll see in heavyweight history if it does happen. But the UFC needs to make it happen to give Ngannou the right money. But if Ngannou loses this one, I don't know what's next. Maybe he wants to re-sign with the UFC because he wants to get one back over Garn. We don't know.
Yeah, I'll also address the fact that this may be the greatest heavyweight matchup in UFC history.
Ever.
We're talking about the best power puncher we've ever seen step foot into the octagon. And we're talking about the guy, maybe the most technical heavyweight striker we've seen. This is a fantastic matchup. Can't wait for it. One of two title fights on this card. The second title fight is the flyweight title fight. And this is a trilogy. Brandon Moreno is defending his title against Deiveson Figueiredo. These guys have a storied past. The first fight, both men took it on 3 weeks' notice, and it was a draw. Had it not been for the point deduction in the third round, Brandon Moreno would have lost that fight to Deiveson. And they run it back in June of last year, and Brandon Moreno dominates. And Deiveson does not look like himself at all, and he gets a third round rear naked choke. And that's why we're seeing Brandon Moreno as a minus 180 favorite here. Do you agree with him being the favorite?
I do. I think Brandon Moreno wins the trilogy. We've seen it in his last fight, and Figgy losing. I just don't see Figueiredo fitting well at 125 pounds. He's too big. I think that weight cut severely compromises his performance, and I feel like we're going to see the same situation here. I feel like this is the last time we see Figueiredo at 125 pounds, and he moves up to 135 pounds. But I think Brandon Moreno gets this one done. I feel like everyone's he is the favorite, but I still see a lot of people sleeping on him. But I feel like it's going to go the judges' scorecards, but it's going to be towards Moreno's side. Getting the win on the scorecards. But Moreno is a different animal on the ground, and we could see a submission once again.
Yeah, the cut to flyweight has never been easy for Deiveson, and it definitely affected him in both of the Brandon Moreno fights here. And I think it will rear its ugly head here, but it will be after Deiveson has secured 3 rounds. That's what I truly believe. I think Deiveson has made the right moves. Usually if a fighter moves their camp after they lose the belt, it's usually a red flag. It's a red flag right now with Amanda Nunes. But call me dumb or whatever, but I think Deiveson is actually making the right move.
With Henry
He went to the right camp here. He's not going to any camp. He's going to the camp where Brandon Moreno has trained before with Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo knows Brandon very well. And I feel like Henry Cejudo, Erica Barracine, Eddie Cha, those guys at Fight Ready MMA, they know what they're doing because we saw it in the Zhang Weili fight. Zhang Weili had never really gone out to wrestle. And what did she do? She wrestles Rose, and in my opinion, she won that fight. And I think Deiveson has the tools to beat Brandon Moreno. As we saw in the first fight, in my opinion, he did beat him that night. I think with the right adjustments, Davison can win this fight. But it's all about how does he tire after the effects of the weight cut. So it's going to be a very competitive fight, probably a split decision. But at the end of the day, I think Davison wins a close split decision win here and gets his belt back.
Yeah, 100%. You know, the power of Figueiredo, you know, we talked about Ngannou and the Figueiredo 125 pounds. He can put anyone's lights out. We saw it with Joseph Benavidez, the horrific scenes of him getting choked out. That was probably the most vicious fight I've ever seen inside the UFC. It was just wasn't good to see someone like Joseph Benavidez, a legend, a guy who's always missed out on the belt, you know, go out like that. It was not very good. But yeah, Figueiredo could be the best fighter in one fight, but you know, I just feel like that cut to 125 pounds just compromises performance. I think 135 pounds is the division for Figueiredo, and I feel like that's where we'll see him shine. And if he goes up to 135 pounds, that division is stacked, and he'll be able to get some good matches up there. But I see Brandon Moreno winning the belt and continuing his legacy as the flyweight champion. But he's got a lot of contenders up and coming. He's got Askar Askarov coming for his belt.
Man, we just wrapped up the two toughest matchups on the card because those fights can go either way. I really am telling you that I'm not confident on those picks, but I'll talk about a fight that I am a little more confident on. Michel Pereira is fighting the debuting Andre Fiolio. Andre Fiolio, best known for his KO over James Vick after James Vick left the UFC. Honestly, that's a gimme at this point. James Vick, historically one of the most chinny fighters we've ever seen. And Pereira, on the other hand, is a madman. This guy, even though he's controlled it a little bit, we still see glimpses of the old wild style that somehow cost him a loss to Tristan Connolly back in the day. So Pereira is a very good fighter, but sometimes he doesn't exactly fight the way he needs to show it. And it's hard to trust him, but I'm going to trust him here against Andre Fiolio. Andre Fiolio does not have the best resume. Sure, he beat Stefan Sakilich, who got released last year, but I'm not entirely sold on him. I know for a fact that he's a good wrestler, but he usually looks to land those knockout blows instead. I've heard stories of him taking down DC, Luke Rockhold in the gym at AK a couple times, but it's really not how he fights here. And if he doesn't fight that way, Pereira will just outpoint him on the feet like he did to Chaos Williams and Nico Price here. But don't get me wrong, Pereira does cut a lot of weight, and Fiolio in that third round could land the finishing blow. But at the end of the day, I think Pereira probably wins this one by unanimous decision.
Well, you were talking about Fiolio and his wrestling. Tristan Connolly was a wrestler, and he won the fight, but he didn't use his wrestling. It was just Michel Pereira, doing his wild stuff. I believe that was his debut, or was it after his debut? Where Imbalance Zero says stop talking. I appreciate that. But yeah, Michel Pereira after his debut, fought Tristan Connolly, and he just gassed himself out. And we've never seen the same Michel Pereira after that. He's been more patient. He's picking his shots. I feel like we're going to see the exact same Michel Pereira in this one. And Andre Fiolio stepping in short notice against one of the toughest matchups, I'd say, at welterweight. Stepping in against the tricky, unorthodox Michel Pereira. He's definitely put his hard work. He's got hard work in store for him. As you mentioned about Fiolio, he's wrestling. The rumors of taking down DC, Luke Rockhold. That's how he wins this fight. He goes into round one. He tries to get that wrestling, into play early, because if he gets it into early, Michel Pereira won't be the same fighter he is in round one, and round two, and three if he gets the wrestling done in the early rounds.
Yeah, it's definitely a competitive matchup, as is Cody Stamann versus Said Nurmagomedov. A lot of people are automatically picking Said here because they just see the last name and they assume he's some dominant Russian wrestler. That's not the case here. This guy trains at Zabit's team over there with Mark Henry, and he's a fantastic striker. And he showed it in many occasions, including the knockout against Mark Striegel in the first round. This guy's a fantastic striker. His wrestling is very good as well, but it's very obvious to me that Cody Stamann is the better wrestler here. Cody Stamann, of course, coming off a tough loss to Merab Dvalishvili, another excellent wrestler. That was just a bad matchup for him. But Cody Stamann has got some solid wins on his resume. Guys like Brian Kelleher. And I think he's got the style to beat Said here. Said's a big favorite here. and I don't agree with it. I think Saeed has very flashy striking and throws a lot of kicks. That's going to open up opportunities for Cody to get takedowns. I think he gets enough control time here to sway the judges in a close fight. I think Cody Stamann wins a split decision.
Yeah, you listed off really good points there. And, if you look at his last name, Nurmagomedov, you're thinking he's got to be a fantastic wrestler, but it's the opposite. He's a fantastic striker. It's weird, but what I can guarantee you is he probably knows how to wrestle. And as you mentioned there, Cody Stamann is the better wrestler. Nurmagomedov hasn't really showed his wrestling, but he just showed his striking. He's really good at striking. And Cody Stamann has, the style to beat Nurmagomedov. It feels weird to say that. It's strange to say that someone has a style to beat Nurmagomedov by wrestling. I never thought I'd ever say that. It's incredible. Stamann has that, that durability takes a lot. We saw his heart. I think it was in the Marab fight.
Yeah, that he actually did secure that third round of the fight, which is very hard to do against Marab Dvalishvili. Cody Stamann is a tough guy, man. And this is going to be a tougher fight than Saeed probably thinks it will be. Saeed is not he doesn't have the flawless record like most of the guys in Khabib's camp. This guy's actually been beaten before, and in the UFC, it was Raoni Barcelos who defeated him by decision. And how did he do it? He out-wrestled him here. And I actually believe that Stamann is just a good wrestler as Barcelos here. So I think he has a skill set to pull it off here. And that might surprise a lot of people, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna pick the underdog here to win.
I'm going to go with Nurmagomedov in this one. I see him learning from his mistakes against Barcelos and being able to, defend the takedowns. Obviously, Cody Stamann's going to go in there in that first round and hunt for that takedown. I guarantee that because if he gets that takedown in that round one, he banks himself around, and then the second and third rounds, Nurmagomedov is not going to be the same fighter. But I see Nurmagomedov being able to defend the takedowns and. I don't see him getting a finish because, as I mentioned, Stamann, he's a durable fighter and he can take a lot of shots. And I feel like it's going to be a split decision, but I'm going to go with Nurmagomedov the other way.
All right, that's going to be our Told You So fight of the week, and we'll move on to the main card opener: Adolfo Vieira versus Wellington Turman. It's kind of a testament that this card is not the craziest card out there. That this fight is some opening card, but nonetheless, we're talking about. Maybe the best BJJ practitioner in the UFC, Adolfo Vieira. He's back and he's fighting Turman, who just beat Sam Alvey. And let's be honest, that was not the most impressive performance out there. Alvey historically on one of the worst skids in UFC history, and he's having a competitive fight with him. So this is not the easiest matchup for Adolfo Vieira, but realistically, he could very well tap him. But don't get me wrong, Turman is actually a black belt himself. He's a very competent grappler here, but if Vieira snatches up a limb or whatever, he probably gets it. But I'll pick the guy who can fight for 15 minutes. I'll pick him. He's an underdog here. And after that first round, Vieira is not the same fighter. Even if he doesn't go for takedowns and tire himself out with grappling like he did with Dustin Stolfus, it's not pretty. He's very predictable, just 1-2, sticking out a jab out there. I think Turman has a more diverse attacks when it comes to the stand-up. And I think Vieira is still scared. In this last fight with Dustin Stolfus, you saw concern on his face for the whole fight because he was worried about getting tired. And Stolfus is just not a good enough fighter to take advantage of that. I think Turman probably is. He's a better grappler than Stolfus. And I think Turman probably beats him up after the first round.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on this one. I think Vieira, as you mentioned there, after the first round, after he tried to get that submission, going all out for it, I feel like the second and third round, he's just not, the same fighter. And as you mentioned, his last fight, he was worried about gassing. And I feel like we're going to see him be a little bit more confident in this one, but still, gassing himself out after Turman survives the grappling. It's going to be hard for him to survive against a guy like Vieira. He's a fantastic grappler. We've seen it in the past, but then he got submitted by Anthony Fluffy Hernandez in one of the biggest shocks, and in the UFC. It was incredible. I don't see Turman being able to submit Vieira, but as I mentioned, we've seen crazy things happen. Fluffy Hernandez submitted him. once he gasses, he's not the fighter that he is, and he's definitely going to gas in this fight, and Turman's going to take over in the second and third round.
Yeah, I believe that Turman wins the decision here. Vieira just can't sustain the pace that he can in the first round for the 15 minutes. And even though Turman did not look excellent against MLV, he can fight well for 15 minutes, and that's what's necessary to beat Adolfo. And we'll move on to the prelim headliner. This card should be on the main card. This fight right here is so exciting. Do I think it's going to be a competitive fight? Not really. Hence why we have Topuria at -600. I think this is a fantastic matchup for Topuria. I think Topuria could fight with a dumb game plan and still win this fight. That's how good I think Topuria is. I think Topuria finds himself in the top 5 of this division. And I can't say the same for Charles Jourdain. Jourdain is still a developing fighter. Sure, he looked like a beast against Ewell. But Ewell is definitely a step down from Topuria. Jourdain, it wasn't too long ago when he got submitted by, who was it? The name is slipping me at this moment. He was submitted in the second round by a tough vet out there, and realistically, he should have won that fight, but he didn't. I think Topuria is way better than that vet that I can't remember at the moment, but I think Topuria gets a finish here however he wants to. He can get a quick knockout here. He can get a submission here, and I think he'll get a submission after he tags Jourdain in the second round. This is going to be a great highlight reel for Topuria.
Juliana Rosa is the name you're looking for.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, but I pretty much agree with you. Yeah, we see Ilya Topuria. I always struggle with names. Well, Ilya, I'm going to call him Ilya. In his last fight against Ryan Hall, one of the weirdest fights that I've seen in the history of mixed martial arts. It was crazy. Ryan Hall, doing his. I can't even describe what he was doing because he's too advanced. But he was doing, his little roly-polies and looking for them, the legs. It was crazy. But Ilya just needed that one big bomb. He's got heavy hands and he's a fantastic wrestler as well, which is crazy. He hasn't showed that the wrestling as much, but he's been knocking guys out, and I feel like this is another good opportunity for him to showcase his striking. And I feel Jourdain, as you mentioned, looked good against Algio well, but this is a massive step up in competition.
Yeah, Jourdain has been a huge favorite against many opponents, and he has competitive fights with them still. We're talking about UFC newcomers or guys very low in the rankings. We're talking Marcelo Rojo, Josh Kulabal. These guys are very low in the rankings, and Topuria is on the outskirts of the top 15, and he's just 23. This guy is already an excellent fighter, and he's just 23. He's only going to get better. And I think he'll crack in the top 15 here with the performance for the night finish here of Charles Jourdain.
I agree. What a savage Jourdain is, stepping at short notice. That not a lot of people want this fight against Ilya, and he stepped in at short notice. He's an absolute savage, and maybe I talked about Croom, and not probably the best idea to accept this fight. I feel like Jourdain would look at this one as well and probably be like, "It wasn't the best option, but his experience. He gets to test himself against best in the world. He gets it tells himself where he's at in the world, but I don't see him winning this one."
Yeah, and I honestly, another guy coming in here. Originally, this was on short notice, but it's got rescheduled twice. I don't think Victor Henry is going to be able to beat Jaime Barcelos here. This is kind of the same situation. Another guy on the outskirts of the top 15 as a huge favorite here, and he's fighting a guy that he's better at in every category. Quite honestly, Jaime Barcelos is a great fighter. He was on a 6 or 7 fight win streak before he lost to Timur Valiev. I feel like that was a fight where he could have won if he fought the right way, but he was just very low output. I don't know what was up with him that night. But he did get 2 knockdowns in that second round. You could have scored that at 10-8. So in my book, it was a draw. But nonetheless, he's fighting a guy here in Henry who should have been in the UFC a while ago. If you look at a guy with a record that good, 21-5, should have been in the UFC a while ago after he beat Kyler Phillips, of all people, who people think the world of. So that lets you know how advanced Victor Henry is. He's a well-rounded guy. He's got legit power in his hands. He's a good wrestler. Not bad at BJJ here, but at the end of the day here, I think Barcelos has him beat. wherever this fight takes place. And I think Barcelos probably looks to probably looks to strike here, maybe get a knockout, but at the end of the day, I think it outclasses him for 15 minutes. Wins a unanimous decision here. I don't think it'll be too competitive.
Yeah, I agree with you. You mentioned outclass, and that's where I see Barcelos. He's going to outclass Henry in this one. If Henry stepping in, well, we originally was stepping in at short notice against one of the tough fighters at 135 pounds. And as you mentioned, he's on the bridge on the top 15. Recently dropped out of the rankings, I do believe. And if you're on the edge of the rankings at 135 pounds, you're doing something right, because that division is absolutely rammed with talent. You could be in the top 20, but be a fantastic elite fighter. It's just 135 pounds at the moment is probably the most active we've ever seen it. And Ronnie Barcelos, as you mentioned, against his last fight against Timo Valiev, didn't look great, but I feel like this is the performance. This is a good matchup for him. Better than, as you mentioned, better than Henry in everywhere the fight goes. I feel like Barcelos won't end this fight. I feel like it's going to go to the scorecards.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we'll move on to a huge string of Contender Series debutants. There were 5 people debuting for the Contender Series in this fight. And if you didn't watch the Contender Series, you probably don't know who these people are, but believe me, they're legit, man. They're legit. And one of them is Michael Morales. He's very young. I believe he's just 22, 23. And he's from Ecuador, Marlon Vieira's stomping grounds. And he's fighting Trevin Giles here. He's got a really good record. He's undefeated, but his last opponent was the best opponent he had ever fought. Before that, he was fighting very questionable competition here. And he's fighting a guy in Giles who is a very established UFC name. He's really never cracked the rankings. He's got really solid wins here. He took away Roman Dolitze's undefeated record. He beat James Krause, as we just said. And I really think he's on a good run here in the UFC, but things didn't work out too well for him at middleweight, which is why he's going down to welterweight here. And I think he's going to perform even better at welterweight, because I think he has a better frame for welterweight. He uses size more. He has one of the best jabs in this welterweight division. And not only that, but he's got a great ground game here. And Morales is a good wrestler here. I don't think he can get the takedowns here. And if he does go for too many, he might get his neck snatched up. At the end of the day, I really like Giles in this spot as an underdog. He's got much more experience and much more tools. I think he should roll here.
Yeah, I agree. I think Giles is going to get this one done. Giles is a fighter that's going to beat these guys that are up and coming, take their O's. A fighter that's going to be, a prospect in years to come. Michael Morales has probably got a fantastic future ahead of him. Giles beat, as you mentioned, beat Dolidze, beat Bevan Lewis, and he beat James Krause as well. When Trevor Giles loses, he either gets submitted and then we see it in his last fight against Dricus Duplessis when he when he landed that big right and got ground and pounded. It was a fantastic shot. Fair play to Dricus. But Marlon Moraes, I was about to call him Marlon Moraes then. Michael Morales is a game opponent, but I see Trevor Giles being the more experienced. He's been there, done it, and I see him getting the win.
Yeah. And we'll move on to Jack Della Modelina versus Pete Rodriguez. Both guys are making the UFC debut. I'm sure most people don't know both of these men. And this is another big favorite on the card. Della Modelina is a fantastic striker. This guy has a really inspirational story. He lost his first 2 fights. He was an 0-2 fighter once in his career. People probably wrote him off at that point. But he has now gone on a 10-fight win streak. And, he's looked impressive the whole way. And on the Contender Series, he fought Andre Lusa, who is a Sanford MMA product, one of Gabler Burns' main training partners, and he puts a beating on him. And that guy is a Nigerian. He's a powerhouse, legit knockout power. He eats all those shots, and he returns fire and hurts him bad. Della Modelina really impressed me on the Contender Series. And he's fighting a guy in Pete Rodriguez, who, in my opinion, does not belong in the UFC. Pete is only 4-0, and he turned pro back in 2020. in 2020 turned pro after an extensive amateur career, and all 4 of his wins are in the Icon FC promotion, which Jorge Masvidal is not a partner of, and all of them are first round knockouts. This is a guy who I believe should be in the LFA right now, maybe in Cage Wars, PFL, somewhere where you're going to build up talent. Not in the UFC. I don't think this guy's ready. He's very unproven after the first round here, and Della Modelina proved himself to me in his last fight. So I really think after the first round, Della Modelina will weather a storm, and I think he's going to put a beating on Rodriguez and get a second round finish.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you there. If you look at the records that Pete Rodriguez has fought, 2-2, 0-1, 1-0, and then his last fight was his best opponent, which was 5-1. And as you mentioned there, Jack Della Modelina, he started off 0-2, 110 on the back, very, very experienced. He's had that O taken away from him, so he knows what it feels like. He doesn't have that pressure of losing the undefeated record, but Pete Rodriguez is kind of defending his record. So a lot of pressure comes when you're undefeated. Unless your name's Khabib Nurmagomedov, everyone's going to lose that O. And I feel like this is Pete Rodriguez's time to lose his O. And unfortunately, it's going to have to be his debut. But he's gonna learn from this. And as you mentioned, he's probably shouldn't be in the UFC as of now. He should be over at LFA. I think that's a fantastic promotion. It's a good feeder league into the UFC. I think LFA would be a perfect opportunity for him right now. But the UFC take gambles, and they've took a gamble on Pete Rodriguez, and we might be able to see. Who knows? He might be a champion in 3 years, 4 years, and he might blow us away on Saturday night. But I think the smart decision is to pick Modelina.
Yeah, and that's why he's a huge favorite. Originally going to fight Warley Alves on this card, who beat Colby Covington. So that lets you know how high-level Jack is. And we'll move on to Tony Gravley versus Simon Oliveira. Simon Oliveira fought in the Contender Series, and he won via split decision. And it was a very competitive fight. Simon, in my opinion, I don't even know if he won that fight, quite honestly, because that fight was very close. He fought a guy in Jose Alday who wasn't the most high-level fighter. And the whole time I was thinking Dana White's not going to give this guy a contract. He's not doing enough. And eventually he gives him a contract. It's quite surprising here. And he's trying to get Tony Gravley, who's a big favorite here. Really good wrestler. Serious power in his hands. Kind of your typical wrestler boxer who will trick you with that overhand right. And that's what he did in his last fight to Nate Maness. At the end of that first round, he basically knocked out Nate Maness. He put him down, was landing the final ground and pound shots, and the round ends. And Nate Maness was legitimately picked up by his corner and put on the stool. The guy has no idea where he is. I have no idea why the fight was not stopped right then and there. But in the second round, Tony Gravley is gassed. He has his adrenaline dump. He gets all his takedowns stuffed, and he gets boxed up by Nate Maness and gets knocked out. So, realistically, Gravley should win this fight. He's the better wrestler, probably the better striker. But the problem here is he's not the most durable guy. He's got an awful gas tank. He relies on explosive movements. And if Simon Oliveira counters him with the perfect shot, he could win here. Well, one thing mentioned here, Simon actually had 10 spinning back fist attempts in his Contender Series fight. The guy, I'll give him a break here. He was fighting on the Contender Series where, you get rewarded for that kind of thing. But a reckless fighter on his own end, too. And that definitely leaves you open and get taken down here. So the pick here is Gravley. But don't get me wrong, the guy could gas and get brutally knocked out like he did against Nate Maness.
Well, I'm going to go with Oliveira in this fight. If you look at Tony Gravley's, his record, if you look at the people he's lost to, Manny Bermudez, Mirav Dashvili back in the day, Ricky Bandeos, and obviously Pat Zapatini when he was 2 fights deep into his pro MMA career. But if you look at how he's lost, and against Brett Johns as well, he's been submitted. Every single one of them losses. And if you look at Oliveira, he's submission guy, and I see. Obviously, Tony Gravley he's wrestling, has really good wrestling, but Oliveira, I see Oliveira catching him in a dash choke. I feel like as you mentioned there, 10 back fists that he threw in his last one. He's crazy. You know what you're gonna see in this one is he doesn't. He's not patient. He doesn't wait for it to come to him. He goes to the fight, and I feel like he's just gonna throw everything in this one. Tony Gravely's gonna try and wrestle, and I think Oliveira is gonna catch him in submission. The only time Tony Gravely has lost by TKO or KO, which was in his last fight. Other than that, he's been submitted or lost a decision. I think he's been submitted 5 times and 1 TKO. So it's Oliveira. The pick here is Oliveira's submission.
Wow, picking the underdog here. We'll move on to Sylvana Gomez Juarez versus Vanessa Demopolis. This fight was supposed to happen last week, and now got rebooked on this card. And I think this is a very close fight. Both girls lost their UFC debut in fairly dominant fashion here, and I think the loser could get cut in this spot, quite honestly, because I feel like both women have huge flaws in their game here. Gomez Juarez is 37. She's a really good boxer, but on the ground, she's got huge holes. And Demopolis, really slick BJJ, but striking, she's not the best, and she's terrible. She's a terrible fighter defensively, quite honestly. She's gotten her face rearranged by Lupita Godinez and Sam Hughes. So you really can't trust her not to get hit when it comes to striking here. And she's not a good wrestler either. So I think this is the right matchup for Gomez Juarez. I think Gomez Juarez can stuff those takedowns and box her up here and get a fairly lackluster unanimous decision win.
Yeah, this is a pick'em. I feel like that's how you would describe it. Pick'em. This could go either way.
Yeah, if we see this on the ground, Vanessa Demopolis definitely could get an armbar, but I don't know if she has the wrestling to take it there.
Yeah, this is a hard fight for me to pick. I don't know whether I'm confident of picking anyone in this one, honestly.
One good thing about Gomez Juarez, she's actually only lost to UFC fighters, UFC caliber fighters. And most of them were actually outside of the UFC. Back in KSW, she lost to the Queen of Violence, Ariane Lipsky. She also lost to Poliana Botejo and Lupita Godinez. Those are her losses. And I don't know if Demopolis is on the caliber of those women.
No, if Oscar thinks that, then I feel like everyone should listen to him. But I'm not going to make a pick in this one because honestly, I don't know. It could go either way.
All right, we'll move on to Matt Fervola versus Gennaro Valdez. This is a very fascinating fight because realistically, Fervola should dominate this fight. I really think he should. But that's what I said about his fight with Terrence McKinney. Terrence McKinney knocked him out in 7 seconds, was it? The quickest KO in lightweight history. And he's fighting a guy in Gennaro Valdez who's got serious power. He was a huge prospect coming into the Dana White's Contender Series. One of Brandon Moreno's main training partners. He was a minus 1,000 favorite in that fight. And he did not look like it at all in the fight. If you've seen that fight, it is one of the craziest fights in Contender Series history. Not just because of the fight itself. When his opponent, Patrick White, I believe his name was walking in the ring, he forgot his mouthpiece in the back. We had to wait for the guy to get his mouthpiece. And it wasn't some high-quality mouthpiece. It was an awful mouthpiece. And it falls out constantly during the fight. And but here's the main thing. Valdez was expected to just start this guy, and he didn't. He got rocked himself. He was on skates. And both guys just they played Rock'em Sock'em Robots in there, and both men were very exhausted. But Valdez, at the end of the day, recovered better and come that second round. By the way, he lost the first round to Patrick White, who is an Alaska FC fighter. He fought all guys with losing records. Realistically, Valdez should have won the fight, but in dominant fashion. But Valdez in the second round does get the knockout, but it was by the skin of his teeth. It was a very competitive fight. And Fervola is a guy who's gone to a draw with man, why am I blanking on his name right now? Is the guy that's gone down.
Lando Venado.
Yeah, Lando Venado. Lando Venado was a great fighter, and he went to a draw with him. He beat Luis Pena. He's got really good wins. One of his recent losses was to Ahmad Sarukian. Fervola is a really talented mixed martial artist, but the problem is that chin is really bad, like really bad. We're talking we can get knocked out in under 10 seconds with a 1-2 bad. That's how bad we're talking here. And Valdez is not a high level fighter, but I can say he hits hard here, so that's a concern. But assuming Fervola doesn't get knocked out here, I think he dominates this and gets a third round submission.
Well, that's it. You mentioned there. This is probably going to be the same fight when Valdez fought White in his last fight. I feel like this is going to be a little bit of a trade in that first round. As you mentioned, Rock'em Sock'em Robots. This is what we're going to go in it. We've seen Matt Fervola get starched in this last fight against Terrence McKinney, and he's also been knocked out in the past against Polo Reyes. So, as you mentioned, the chin is not all there for Matt Fervola. He's got a great personality, steam train. He lost against Armin Tsuzuki, but there's no shame in that loss. Armin is top 10. In the world, so he's gonna do some good things. So that one he can probably just set away. But he's beaten these tricky guys, these tricky long rangey guys in the division. Jalen Turner, Luis Pena, these tricky long strikers. And this is a good test for Valdez. And as you mentioned, a training partner of the champion Brandon Moreno fighting at the end of the card. So if Valdez, I believe. This is a tricky one, but I'm going to go. I was going to pick Valdez there, but I'm going to change my pick back to Matt Fervola. I think Matt Fervola gets this one done. I'm going to go Steam Train.
All right, we'll move on to the opener of the fight card.
Steamroller.
Kay Hansen versus Jasmine. Wait for it, Jasavidius. Do not quote me on that. Even John Anik is struggling with this name. She's a Canadian. She started her career late. She's 30, but she's got a very similar amount of experience as Kay Hansen. She started late. She met up with this wrestling coach, and then she started training MMA. She's got really no background besides that wrestling she learned in her MMA training, and she's used it very well in her Contender Series fight. She got a 10-8 round in the first round with her wrestling, very dominant. But in the second and third round, she definitely got cracked on the feet, but her wrestling did rescue her in that fight. But she's fighting Kay Hansen. Kay Hansen has not fought in a very long time. She's actually been dealing with eating disorders, apparently. And that's a very serious issue. And that's why she's moved up a weight class now. She doesn't want to deal with any more of that. So she's always been one of the bigger strawweights here, and I don't think she's undersized here. Undersized against Jasmine. Jasmine is an inferior wrestler, an inferior grappler, and I really think that Jasmine probably gets a takedown at some point, and I think Kay Hansen is good enough to get an armbar off her back here. Jasmine just not experienced enough to avoid those submission attempts here against Kay Hansen, who submitted Jin Yufrey. Jin Yufrey is a far better fighter than Jasmine, in my opinion. So I really think that Kay Hansen can get it done here. But it is a concern that she's been out for a very long time. And assuming she's been working, trying to get better, I think she should win this fight. But if it stays striking, that could be a way for Jasmine to win, but as I noted in the Contender Series fight, she's not good defensively striking.
Yeah. If you look at Kay Hansen's losses, she loses to the prospects that she lost against Erin Blanchfield in her last fight, and she lost against Corey McKenna. I feel like, as you mentioned, I guess in your phrase, she got that triangle armbar, and you mentioned triangle armbar, so maybe Oscar has just picked the actual move to finish the fight.
Yeah, that's a real possibility. Jiu-jitsu, was made for the smaller people. It could definitely be an opening there for Kay Hansen to win here, especially since Jasmine usually wants to drag fights to the ground. I think she's a purple at the highest here. I don't think she's good enough to avoid the submissions from Kay Hansen, which Kay Hansen, she loves to train BJJ. She's one of the people that's trains a lot of no-gi too. I think she should win this fight. And as I mentioned, Jasmine has a decent amount of experience. The one person we can say that she's fought on the UFC roster is Elise Reed. Elise Reed beat her, but in my opinion, that was a bad decision. So you could argue that Jasmine's undefeated, but this is definitely the toughest matchup she's had her whole career. And I think Kay Hansen wins this fight by first round. I'll say first round submission. First round submission on.
Yeah, I'm going to go decision. I'm never usually confident on betting or picking a women's fight to get finished unless you're like a Nunes, Pena, Shevchenko. That's when I'm confident. So I'm going to go decision. But I'd love to see the card start off with a finish. I feel like it sets the tone for the rest of the card. And it's definitely a possibility that Kay Hansen gets the submission win. But I'm going to go. I'm going to go for a decision. Maybe a split.
Yeah, she's gonna. Kay Hansen's actually. She personally told Dana White that she wanted this fight moved to a week later, so she could fight in her hometown of Anaheim, California. So she's gonna have extra motivation here, and she's gonna be kicking off this card hopefully with a win. And what a card it is! Headlined by Francis Ngannou versus Cyril Gane for the undisputed heavyweight championship. I cannot wait. I cannot wait for this card.
Yeah, well, we're in store for a fantastic night of fights. I'm sure they won't disappoint. And if you just look at that, them two fights right there, oh my goodness, we are absolutely spoilt for choice. The rest of the card might not be, the best, but them two fights alone, that's what we're really tuned in for.
Yeah, without a doubt. This is when we talk about doubleheader title fight cards. This is exactly what you want. The heavyweight title, unfortunately, we don't see it get defended that often. So whenever it happens, it's a big deal. And I feel like this is the biggest heavyweight title fight in a long time. I would say biggest since the Stipe DC trilogy from 2020.
What a fantastic trilogy that is! I talked about it earlier. If the UFC, put their cards right, we could see a fantastic trilogy between Ngannou and Gane. But the UFC need to get the numbers right, and I'm excited to see what happens. The co-main event has a lot of stakes in it, but the main event, the stakes that is with this fight, it's incredible. The former training partners, the coach. The UFC should pay coach to Fernando Lopez. The UFC should pay him because he's hyped this up more than them.
Yeah, the coach Ferdinand Lopez has gotten so many headlines around this fight. Chelsea has actually criticized these two men for not promoting the fight enough between themselves, but you got to give all the props to Coach Ferdinand. I feel like if Cyril wins, he should give instead of 10%, if he's giving like 12, 13% just for the kind of promotion he's put into this fight.
100%, and I agree. But whatever happens, we're going to get a definite end who the better fighter is on Saturday night. All the training videos, all that, the sparring videos, it goes out the window now. And Saturday night, they've got 25 minutes to prove they are the better man, and it can go 20 million different ways.
Yeah, there's so many possibilities. I feel like whoever wins will be in a prime position to call out the greatest of all time, John Jones, for a matchup possibly for International Fight Week. That would be a dream scenario. Could you imagine?
I'd love to see John Jones come back. And but
yeah,
if John Jones did come back, I would prefer it to be against Ngannou. I don't know why.
Yeah, because we've never seen John lose. And to see John lose via knockout, that would be even crazier. So, of course, that's the matchup I prefer. But I'll side with Cyril Gane. And if John uses grappling, I'm telling you, John will be the heavyweight champ. But we'll find that out hopefully later this year.
Yep, 100%. That is another episode we might possibly talk about. But yeah, this has been a fantastic episode. UFC 270, preview, and the Kattar versus Chikadze recap. It was a fantastic event. Kattar showed up, proved why he's one of the best in the world. And then we've got UFC 270, Ngannou versus Gane, Brandon Moreno versus Davison Figueiredo. It's a fantastic event this weekend. I'm so excited. I can't wait. I'm sure you will tune in. Any last words, Oscar?
Yeah, I'm actually going to be seeing this at the theater, so the roar of the the crowd is going to be really fun to be there for. I think it's going to
Actually,
be
at a
it's going to be
theater,
a really
like a
fun event.
cinema.
Yeah, in a movie theater. Yeah, it's going to be a really cool experience. I'll tell you how it was. I'll tell you if it's worth seeing.
Yeah, that seems cool. That doesn't happen over here. Maybe it's too late for us, but I don't think a lot of people would show up at 4 a.m. in a cinema.
Oh, that is true. That's a good point.
Yeah, but yeah, that would be a cool experience. I'd definitely like to see talk about that next week. But yeah, a very good bye from me and Oscar. We'll talk to you next week where we get to unfold everything that happened this